This is what I wanted to see in War Horse. Okay guys, you're allowed to cry. You're allowed. It's okay. You hear the soundtrack? You know it's gonna be good. Epic! Oh my god! Watch out, I'll ruin your childhood. That's right, this is also a samurai. Hold on! Why are they attacking now? What? Hi and welcome to History Legends. In this video we'll do a step-by-step historical breakdown of The Last Samurai. 81% of you voted for this reaction. Here it is. Honestly, it's one of my favorite movies ever. Absolutely everything about it is epic. Oh yeah, by the way, for this video I wanted to have a fresh cut, everything. But then Canada happened. My car was literally stuck in the snow. For hours I was shoveling and in the end I had to cancel the barber appointment. So the fresh cut will be for later. It's important for you to know that the events depicted in The Last Samurai blend over a decade of history into a shorter narrative. Basically the movie depicts multiple battles from the Boshin War and from the Satsuma rebellion. But the bulk of the movie covers Satsuma's rebellion. Are you ready? It's gonna be the most epic movie scene ever. Let's go! The samurai! Oh, the soundtrack. Just so amazing. Oh, check this out. You see how all the sashimonos, the flags that are attached at the back of the samurai, do you notice how they're all mixed up? Literally, you have all sort of symbols and colors, everything mixed together. Historically, the flags with the same clan emblems and colors would be regrouped together. Logically, you want to fight with guys that you know from the same clan. And then a samurai army would be composed of multiple clans. For example, this was the emblem of the Satsuma domain that rebelled against the Imperial government. They should all have that flag. But even then, since the 1840s, the samurai had leveled up and became a bit more stealthy because of firearms. Instead of wearing these huge flags, they would instead wear a piece of cloth on the upper left sleeve with their clan's emblem on it. Some would even wear it on their chest. Oh, now we have a beautiful view of the samurai army. Honestly, I'm pretty happy to see that many extras and not pure CGI. Tom Cruise, one of the only movies where we forget Tom Cruise and just see a character. Well done, honestly. So epic! Oh, the entire movie is based on the fact that the samurai rejected modern weaponry and preferred to stick to the traditional way. But by 1877, the Satsuma army was not the Sekigahara-style feudal army that the West fantasized about. This is what we see in the movie, but do you want to see what the actual samurai looked like? Watch out, I'll ruin your childhood. But to be honest, I was shocked too. Colorful, traditional clothing and no armor, because that's very expensive and not useful against firearms. As a matter of fact, if you look closely, they don't have anything medieval apart from the katana. And here's another image of Satsuma's rebel samurai army. It looks like a European one. Remember, Japan started modernizing as early as 1840 through the Dutch, who kept them up to date with the technologies around the world. So this is what we should see here for the main body of infantry. Man, it gives me Shogun 2 vibes, like all the flashbacks, they come back. And this epic music. All the hundreds of hours on that game. Oh, so in the movie this is the Imperial Line Infantry. It seems the uniform in the movie is heavily inspired by this one, which in fact is a special uniform for the Imperial Guard. If we put them side by side, we can see that in reality they actually wore a Prussian style Feldmütze, the sort of flat hat. Whereas in the movie they added some sort of visor cap. Surprise, surprise, it was the one used during the Russo-Japanese War. I don't know why they did that. The Feldmütze looks pretty cool. Other than that, it looks pretty accurate. The color is the same. We can even see the iconic white leather gaiters. Let's go. And in Shogun 2, they had even the Boshin War. Ah, good memories. Oh, guys. Okay, let's hear it one more time. It's just so epic. Am I the only one who gets goosebumps every time I hear that word? Ute means fire or to attack in Japanese. Oh yeah, before I forget, The gun that the Imperial Army is using is actually a US Civil War era 12-pounder mountain howitzer. To be honest, it's not completely crazy. The Japanese Imperial government did in fact buy a lot of US Civil War surplus, but for the heavy caliber artillery, they mainly used Prussian ones and British 12-pounder Armstrong guns. Alright, let's go. Epic. So they all fire one after another. Look at that. Ah, okay. Are you kidding me? What is this? That's not the result of this cannon. It's tiny. With all the shrapnel, for sure some of the guys here would have been hit. During the actual Battle of Shiroyama, the one that heavily inspired the movie, the Imperial Army actually fired a 3-hour-long barrage. Can you imagine that? 3 hours. Constant shelling. I never understood why they needed cavalrymen to fire these palisades. Couldn't they have some of the infantrymen do it? Okay, you don't want to do this in reality. In the movie, it sorts of makes sense. But the reason you don't want to do it is because a few shots like this in a standing packed crowd are enough for the entire unit to disband or rout. You know, the blinking white flag in Total War. So I wasn't there, but logically the samurai would not have done that.
Our men are running from the battlefield! Shameful display!
I know in movies they like to be dramatic and never send skirmishes, but come on, you can't send one line of infantry, maybe some cavalry, I don't know. Oh my god, look at that! How many officers are there? Okay, we see one here at the corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 officers side by side. What the hell? And what is this formation anyway? Can I even call this a formation? And why do the officers have a very different uniform from their men? In the 1860s, the shogun knew the writing was on the wall and wanted to quickly modernize his army. So they looked around the world for the best army of the time. And that's how in 1867 they asked France for military advisors. 1867, but this takes place in 1877, 10 years later. What happened is that despite France's defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, French military prestige was still intact in Japan. What nobody knows is that once Emperor Meiji took over, he invited a second French military mission in 1872, and even a third one in 1884. Now, why is it important to us? Because the Imperial Army adopted the same doctrine and generally the same uniform as the French. Take a look at this painting of the 1870 Franco-Prussian War. This is more the formation that we should have seen in the movie. The battalion is broken up in multiple lines with ranks of 2 men, which allows to elongate the line to cover more ground and thus maximize firepower. You see how spread out the officers are on that painting? Not every 2 meters like in this movie. We can see one on the far right of the line, probably a captain, with lieutenants spread along the line. I can see 2 of them. And the other reason why I'm showing you this painting is because many Japanese units went as far as to wear the same uniform as the French. Even the typical red and blue. The Japanese regular line infantry preferred the one of the French marine infantry that you can see on screen, this dark blue. So what we should see is the iconic French cap instead of the German-style Feldmütze. They would wear the same white leather gaiters and the dark blue pants with the red stripe. So basically the officers have the proper uniform and all the other men should have the same one. What's missing in the movie is this big blue coat worn by the French infantry. And again, a knapsack. Surprise, surprise, this is exactly what we can see on this Japanese painting. It's literally all there. The same uniform as the French. I was shocked. Instead of this one that mixes up multiple time periods and I don't know.
The mighty samurai cannot stand up to the howitzer.
This kills me. Most Imperial officers used to be samurai as well. So the war here wasn't government versus samurai. It was ex-samurai now working for the government versus samurai rebels. 100 times better than CGI. Okay, I agree, this formation looks good on cam. 100%. It's just not what would have been used historically. It's just that these huge blocks just negate any firepower. Also, look at these flags. Literally, what are they? I looked for these in documents for hours, couldn't find them. In 1877, the Imperial Army used this flag that you're very familiar with, and only that one. Because the Imperial government dismantled the samurai and their clans, so they wouldn't have these sort of emblems. But remember when I told you that they mashed two wars into one for this movie? Well, these two flags are actually inspired by the ones used by the Satsuma and Shoshu domains of the Imperial Alliance that took down the shogun during the Boshin War. You can see exactly the same colors with very similar shapes. Okay, you see the flags attached to their back. That is very feudal Japan, used 300 years before the events of this movie. Could have sent at least a line of skirmishers, like it's not that complicated. Oh, okay, they have skirmishers, like, but two. Okay, the ambush. Okay, before we continue, I have to tell you about Tom Cruise's character. In the movie, he's Nathan Algren. Basically what happened is that Hollywood changed a French hero into an American one. So in reality, the story of Nathan Algren is heavily inspired by the one of Jules Brunet, a 28-year-old artillery officer, veteran of the Mexican expedition, and who volunteered to take part in the French mission to modernize the army of the shogun. Basically, their task was to train them in how to use the French chassepot rifle and structure the army into regiments and brigades. There are many reasons why Brunet is famous, but one of them was because the Japanese actually liked his artistic skills. Here's one of his paintings of an infantryman of the shogunate's army right before the Boshin War. That's right, this is also a samurai. And not all this. However, what's interesting is that the hat that this infantryman is wearing is very similar to the uniform that we can see at the beginning of the movie. Very interesting. The French military mission had been in Japan for less than a year when the war broke out between the shogun and the emperor, and the mission was called back to France. However, although it was almost a lost cause, Jules Brunet and 9 other officers stayed behind to help the shogun. They simply couldn't abandon him. Despite other efforts, the emperor's army had a massive numerical advantage and conquered Hakodate, and the French officers had to be low-key evacuated in secret. However, Japan always kept deep respect for these French samurai, to the extent where Jules Brunet was awarded the Order of the Rising Sun by his former enemy, the emperor. So at least here we can see some better tactics. The samurai army is hiding, trying to plan an ambush. Okay, the clash of civilizations is certainly very romantic and entertaining. But what we see here, archers behind a palisade, was used at Sekigahara almost 300 years before this. Even at Sekigahara, they used freaking firearms. And you see how the flags are sticking out. What's the tactical advantage of that? Literally know where the enemy is hidden. Oh my god, this tactic is even worse than I thought. They fire into a palisade and everyone behind gets killed. And we can see how this formation is completely useless. 7 rows of infantrymen? Why don't you line them all up? And they fire at the same time. Hold on. Why are they attacking now? What? Why would they charge now? I don't understand why they only fired 2 volleys. They were literally decimating the samurai army. And we can see about 7 rows of infantrymen. They could literally advance like that by rotating firing lines and advancing in bounds forever and keep the samurai army pinned down. Also notice how the Imperial infantrymen are firing a mixture of Mauser-Gewehr 1871 and Model 1884. Close enough, but not really. Because if they were to use a Prussian weapon, it should have been the Dreise needle gun. But even then, the bulk of the Emperor's soldiers were equipped with muzzle-loading pattern 1853, and mainly the 1866 breech-loading Snider Enfield, British weapons that were easily imported through Hong Kong. Now, Imperial cavalry preferred the American 1865 Spencer carbine, which had a much higher rate of fire. But as you can imagine, it was a logistical nightmare to keep up with all these foreign weapons. So that's why after 1877 the Japanese just stopped using foreign rifles and made their own called the Murata. It was a domestic firearm based on the French chassepot and that combined the good points of various foreign weapons. So let's watch a bit because I was a bit distracted. Okay, it's a massacre. I don't understand why they're charging. Oh, I have a question. Why didn't the samurai army defend these hills? By being behind the hill, it protects from firearms, it protects from enemy artillery. Fire arrows! Lindy Beige would go nuts! Come on. This is BS. Your entire plan, the entire battle strategy relies on this one guy, on the aim of this one guy. What is happening? Had you sent scouts, you would have known. Kills me every time. Oh, here, check this out. Here we can see the Imperial flag that was used at the time. So that's good. So at least they don't have the Boshin War flags. Okay, archers shooting up again. Not only was it not used during the Satsuma rebellion, but they don't even use it properly, like they would have been used during the feudal era. Okay, instead of this, remember the picture I showed you earlier. Oh my god, what's that? A gun? Look at that, all the samurai rebels are equipped with firearms. Every man of the Satsuma army was equipped with a firearm as primary weapon, as well as 100 rounds of ammo. Historically, they would have been equipped with old-fashioned, muzzle-loaded M1857 Krinka rifles. Its rate of fire was much lower than the breech-loading Snider Enfield. Also, the Snider Enfield had an effective range of about 550 meters, when the Russian Krinka was only accurate up to 285 meters. And if that wasn't enough, Saigo Takamori's army suffered from a severe lack of ammunition. For example, the samurai rebels could produce 5,000 rounds a day, and they often resorted to handcrafting them by melting pots and kettles. Meanwhile, the government could provide between 120 and 300,000 rounds a day, either through local production or through imports. What? Look at his face! Even him in the back is like, bruh. Why is he smirking? You're not supposed to die. That's not the objective. You want to win the war. Okay, sorry, I halted this epic moment. But let's talk a second about Katsumoto. He's heavily inspired by Saigo Takamori. And he definitely wanted to win the war. It wasn't about dying with honor. Okay, I have it right here. Saigo was the Japanese army's first ever field marshal while holding the title of commander of the Imperial Guard. He's literally at the top. And also, he didn't wear the traditional samurai uniform. No, that's for the lower classes. He still wore his fancy French uniform until the end. Okay, it's the time of the charge. Let's go. Epic! Oh my god! It's so epic. Charging with 2 swords, yeah. At least they're firing back. At least they're firing something. While they're moving forward, could literally just retreat. Oh. In a way, because of the entire chaos of the previous events. Oh my god, it's a massacre. It's a literal massacre of the Imperial army. They don't stand a chance. So in a way, what we see in the movie, it's kind of true. The Imperial soldiers fared poorly at hand-to-hand fighting against the samurai. As a matter of fact, to counter the samurai in close quarters, the Imperial army had a 100-man police unit armed exclusively with swords. They were called the Batutai, literally Drawn Sword Regiment. They came into action on March 14, 1877 during the Battle of Tabaruzaka. The Batutai fought hand-to-hand with the rebel samurai forces over 2 days and suffered staggering casualties, 25 killed and 54 wounded. Oh, I almost forgot! One of the main reasons why Saigo Takamori rebelled against the imperial government was because the army opened its doors to non-samurai of peasant background through a conscription lottery based on the French model. And he hated it. Saigo had no regard for this conscripted army of farm boys. However, the Satsuma rebellion proved that a conscripted army of peasants could outfight even a determined band of samurai. Like it was shown during the siege of Kumamoto Castle, where a garrison of 4,000 local conscripts held out 2 months and eventually won against 20,000 samurai. Honestly, this battle was the first one, and it sealed the fate of the samurai rebellion. They were demoralized, many deserted, it was chaos. And as Saigo Takamori's army kept shrinking, the Imperial army hunted him down with 90,000 men. Lecture over, let's go. Oh, maybe it wasn't a bad idea to send reinforcements. The music is just too epic. Whoa! AI powered bullets! The bullets only hit the samurai, but avoid their own men. Brilliant! Okay, what is this mess? Okay, this is BS. This is pure BS. With all the smoke and the noise of the battle, not a chance that they would see it. Not a chance. At least use a drum or a trumpet or something. Oh, epic. Oh, by the way. Again, I'm stopping. I always stop before the epic moments. You see how the top ranking samurai all have some uniforms that are very dull. It's all shades of brown and black. But remember, these were the elite. This is how a samurai warrior in traditional uniform would actually look like. It's literally so colorful, very majestic. And that's not a coincidence. The samurai were the aristocrats of feudal Japan. They had to project this prestigious position. But technically, here again, on a tactical level, they kept men in reserve. Oh, more men in reserve to attack reinforcements. From tactical level, it's very brilliant, very smart. Bugle call. Finally! Let's be honest. They should have done that right at the beginning when they saw thousands of samurai charging them. You hear the soundtrack? You know it's gonna be good. The only thing is, where's the infantry? They had hundreds of infantrymen left. Now it's all cavalry. At least they all have the same flag, at least. You see they have the French uniform, these guys. But I never understood why he's so panicked. The cavalry's been standing there for minutes. Why didn't he fire his howitzers before? Obliterate these guys in a minute. Okay, are you ready? Okay. One of the most epic scenes in war movie history. Oh, Charge of the Light Brigade vibes! It's definitely epic. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot to tell you that the samurai army also had artillery. Mainly Japanese-made copies of French cannons. At the very beginning of the campaign, they had 28 5-pounders, 2 heavy 16-pounders, and 30 mortars. Honestly, not bad. This is what I wanted to see in Warhorse. Why couldn't Warhorse do the same thing? And don't worry guys, real men are allowed to cry in this scene. Oh, and here, I think they're in 2 ranks. Okay, maybe not. One rank could be on the knees, maybe. Check this out. They fire. We have hundreds of riflemen. Barely any samurai is shot. Hundreds of bullets flying towards these horses and the cavalry guys. Historically, by 1870, the rate of fire just made cavalry charges impossible. Here, with the breech-loading Snider Enfield, a trained soldier could fire up to 10 rounds a minute in perfect conditions. Even if the soldiers can only fire 3 rounds a minute because of stress. It's still a shit ton of bullets flying towards the cavalrymen. So let's say they had 200 riflemen times 3, it's 600 bullets. in a pack formation of horses. Okay, but that's a good effect of what happens when cavalry charges a line of infantry. They pierce through. Okay, now they're screwed. Bring the new weapon. Oh, and this is also accurate. The Imperial army did in fact have 2 Gatling guns at Shiroyama and 1 French Montigny mitrailleuse. And the Gatling guns were certainly used during the battle, so this is historically accurate. And what I like is that the final attack is loosely based on real events. So Saigo Takamori only had 500 warriors left in the Shiroyama castle. The hill was encircled by 15,000 Imperial troops. After being bombarded every day, the last surviving samurai drew their katanas and charged downhill towards Imperial positions and to their death. I guess a cavalry charge makes it a bit more epic. Okay, this moment is one of my favorite ones. When he can't put the ammo and he stresses. Oh. Okay guys, you're allowed to cry. You're allowed. It's okay. Manly tears. Girls don't get it. Quick pause, there's one thing I always wondered is that Gatling guns have an effective range of about 300 to 500 yards. So in a way, immediately after seeing the cavalry at the end of the field, they could have taken out the Gatling guns and immediately fire from there. But of course, it's less dramatic, right? An ex-samurai tells them to stop. Doesn't want to see the massacre anymore. Even though these guys massacred all their buddies, but... That's all I have for you today. I hope you liked this special video. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to help me do more research for war movies, consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the description.